When you picture a millionaire, what comes to mind? Is it the fancy cars, the mansions, the whole reality TV lifestyle? Well, we're about to pull back the curtain on all of that. We're going to look at what decades of actual research says about who America's wealthy really are and how they got there. So let's get into it.
Okay, so get this. This quote comes from a vice president at a trust company. This guy's job is to deal with wealthy people, right? But when he met a focus group of actual millionaires for the first time, this was his reaction. He was completely floored. And you know what? His disbelief, it's exactly how most of us see wealth. It's an image that, it turns out, is almost totally wrong. And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. If that big spending, high-flying stereotype is just a myth, then who are the real millionaires living all around us? And what's their secret?
So, first things first, we've got to tear down that myth. Hollywood and the entire advertising world have done an amazing job convincing us that being wealthy means spending a ton of money. But the actual research? Yeah, it tells a completely different story.
Yeah, the gap between what we think and what's real is, it's huge. We're all picturing flashy luxury cars, right? Nope. The data shows they're usually driving American-made sedans. We imagine them in $1,000 designer suits and shiny Rolexes, but the reality? It's more like off-the-rack suits and watches that just, tell the time. And forget the sprawling mansions. The typical millionaire, they live in a pretty normal, middle-class home.
All right, so let's meet these real millionaires. We're done with stereotypes now. This is all about the cold, hard data gathered from talking to thousands of wealthy people over more than 20 years.
Let's just start with this number, $399. That is the absolute most, the typical millionaire has ever paid for a suit. Think about that. For every one millionaire with a $1,000 suit, the researchers found at least 6 non-millionaires who had one.
And how about their watch? $235. That's the most they've ever spent. Remember that trust VP from the beginning? He was wearing a $5,000 watch. It just goes to show you, wealth isn't what you wear, it's what you keep.
So what about that old idea that you have to be born rich to be rich, that it's all inherited? Well, this is where the research just blows that myth completely out of the water. An incredible 80%, yeah, you heard that right, 80% of America's millionaires are first generation. They're self-made, they built it all themselves, in their own lifetime.
So who is this person, really? The data paints a surprisingly clear picture. The typical millionaire is a self-employed business owner and often in what you might call a dull normal industry. Think paving contractors or pest control. They're usually married, they live in the same town for most of their life, and they are obsessive savers and investors. And that mansion? Not even close. They live in a home worth about $320,000.
This quote really gets to the core of how these folks think. For a lot of them, the big prize wasn't just having the money. It was the satisfaction that came from setting a goal, sticking to it with discipline, and actually achieving financial independence all on their own.
And that mindset is what brings us to the real formula for building wealth. Because if there's one lesson that stands out from all this research, it's that having a high income does not automatically make you rich.
See, the real way to measure wealth isn't your paycheck, it's your net worth. It's simple. That's everything you own, your cash, your investments, your house, minus everything you owe. That is the real scorecard. Okay, so the research came up with this really simple formula, kind of like a rule of thumb, to see where you stand. You ready? Take your age, multiply it by your annual pre-tax income for your household, and then just divide that number by 10. What you get is your expected net worth. It's a benchmark for someone in your exact age and income group.
And this formula reveals two very different kinds of people. On one side, you have the PAWS. That stands for prodigious accumulators of wealth. These are the people who are masters at turning their income into actual wealth. And on the other side, the UAWs, underaccumulators of wealth. These folks might make a ton of money, playing great financial offense, but their defense, their saving and investing, is weak. So they end up with a low net worth for their income.
It's a pretty interesting question to ask yourself, isn't it? Take a second and think about it. Are you actually turning the money you make into lasting wealth?
So how do the PAs do it? How do they get so good at this? Well, the research boiled it down to 7 core factors. We're going to focus on the big foundational habits that really move the needle. The absolute foundation is just being frugal. They live on way less than they make. They care a lot more about financial freedom than they do about looking rich. And here's a big one. Their parents didn't give them what the researchers call economic outpatient care, basically regular cash handouts. That forced them to learn how to stand on their own two financial feet.
And the difference in how they act is, wow, it's pretty striking. PAWs spend almost double the amount of time every single month planning their finances and investments compared to UAWs. Building wealth isn't an accident for them, it's something they actively work on. And here we are again, back to that frugality, laid out in black and white. This is what the typical millionaires they surveyed actually paid for this stuff. It's not about being cheap, it's about making deliberate choices to put financial freedom ahead of buying things.
Okay, so it's one thing to understand all this, but it's another to actually put it into practice. So how can you take these ideas and start using them on your own journey to financial independence?
This quote is from the father of one of these successful wealth accumulators, and it's just so powerful. It's a total shift in how you look at things. Real success isn't about the stuff you own. It's about what you build, what you create, what you accomplish, and that includes building your own financial freedom. So if there's one thing to really walk away with, it's this. A huge salary, that's your financial offense, that's great, but it's only half the story. Real, lasting wealth isn't just about offense. It's built on a foundation of amazing defense. We're talking discipline, frugality, and solid planning. That's how you actually win the financial game.
And that leaves us with one last question, and this one's for you. After hearing all this, what is the one habit, just one thing, you could change, starting right now, to start building your own wealth?